What's up, everybody? GeauxBurns climbing back upon Mount Soapbox. Well, obviously, I'm just sitting here in front of my webcam, so I'm not really climbing on anything. But yes, it is time for another rant. And by request from Bart over on Twitter, GeauxBurns, will you ever do a face cam in your Discuss vlog videos? It would be a nice change. And as most of you know, I do face cam during the ACG International podcast. FYI, if the latest podcast is up, I will have it up in the card section as usual. And if you haven't had a chance, be sure and check out Carrick's channel, ACG. He does the best reviews of indie and AAA games out there. So be sure and check out Carrick's channel, ACG, as well as the ACG International podcast, which includes Carrick, Reg, Silver, myself, and every now and then we have a guest. So yeah. Okay. So I just thought for this episode we would do something different because Bart wanted something involving webcamming. And I realized he said discuss our vlog, but we're going to do it with the rant video. Why not, shall we? And today it's kind of a trilogy in my rant series. By the way, if you have a rant suggestion for a future episode, and if you don't want me to webcam anymore, let me know below in the comment section. But if you do have a rant suggestion, leave that in the comments. You can tweet it to me, Facebook it, or email it my way, GeauxBurns@gmail.com. So, I have done, at least two Nintendo NES Classic rants thus far. So why not do a third one? This one from GameSpot. Nintendo discontinues the NES Classic globally. Yay, the victim of its own success. So here's the updated paragraph from GameSpot, which is, by the way, linked below in the description section. The Nintendo Classic Edition also has been discontinued in Europe. A Nintendo spokesman told Eurogamer the console, which was called the NES Classic Mini in the territory, is no longer being manufactured in Europe, combined with the discontinuation in Japan. That now means that the miniature console is now out of print worldwide. So here's the original story from April 13th. After just 6 months on the market, Nintendo says it is discontinuing the NES Classic Edition in North America. Nintendo did not provide any specific reason for why the console is being discontinued. Could this be the reason why? Because they need to make more of these? The Switches? Yeah. It could be. All right, so anyways, the system had been plagued with supply issues. Months after its launch, it was still selling out almost as quickly as new shipments were released. Quote unquote, throughout April, NOA territories will receive the last shipments of Nintendo Entertainment System, the NES Classic Edition system for this year, Nintendo said in a statement. So, if you really want a Nintendo Classic Edition, you might be out of luck. Then again, this might be your last chance to go out there and find one. And I think the original retail price was $60. It included 30 Nintendo NES games, including the Super Mario games, Super Mario Brothers, Super Mario Brothers 2, Super Mario Brothers 3, the original Legend of Zelda 2, Link's Awakening. Was it Link's Awakening? It wasn't Link's Awakening. It was like the New Adventures of Link. And, you know, had Mega Man 2. It also had a lot of really, lesser known quality NES games. It had some good NES games. It had some bad NES games. But overall, you're probably running out of an opportunity to get the NES Classic if you haven't done so already. Continuing, we encourage anyone interested in obtaining the system to check it out with the retail outlets regarding availability. Nintendo understands that it's been difficult for many consumers to find a system, and for that we apologize. We paid close attention to consumer feedback, and we greatly appreciate the incredible level of consumer interest and support for this product. Nintendo has only said so far that the NES Classic Edition is being discontinued in North America. When asked whether the discontinuation... Okay, so this was before the update regarding Europe. So it's discontinued in North America as well as Europe, which means it'll probably get discontinued everywhere else as well. And that was a major disappointment because myself and so many other Nintendo fans especially from the old days back in the 80s with the NES, were really excited about picking up the Nintendo NES Classic, but they didn't make enough, and whenever it finally hit the stores, it sold out quickly. And a lot of people were taking advantage of this by buying up several Nintendo Classics and selling them on eBay for a few bucks, actually a few $100, even in some cases a few thousand. I think it was in, which one? It was my Nintendo NES Classic sold out Rant, one of them. I may put that at the end of the video, or I may put it in the card section. But yeah, people were making some serious buck off of the fact that Nintendo didn't exactly have that many Nintendo NES Classics on the shelves, which I think is total BS. But if you still want to purchase it, you're going to probably have to go to Amazon. And right now on Amazon, you can get a Nintendo Entertainment System NES Classic Edition for roughly nearly $300. That's about the same price as this thing, the Switch. Of course, the Switch doesn't include any games, so you have to actually go buy the games. And it doesn't include the Pro Controller. That's about, what, $500 for just one game, like I did, Nintendo. Taking my money and taking everyone else's money. So, yeah. And if you go to like a retail chain like Best Buy, for example, sold out. So where it's listed for $60, currently you can't purchase it because of those two sad words. So, yeah. It's unfortunate. I mean, it only was on the market for, 6 months? And it was announced less than a year ago to much hype, much excitement by the Nintendo fans out there. And alas, they did not make as many as they should have. And it's very unfortunate. And there were other things I ranted about. Some things were kind of stupid. The whole Zapper thing, obviously. And now I know that Zappers cannot work on HD TV, so no Duck Hunt with the Nintendo NES Classic. But I think the control cord should have been longer, or it should have been a Wi-Fi wireless controller, because it wasn't that very long. Now, just in case you thought I was done ranting, think again. According to IGN and several other sources, Nintendo will reportedly release the Super Nintendo Classic this year. So, yeah, it's not over yet. So, obviously, I think that pretty much answers the question as to why Nintendo has went ahead and discontinued the NES Classic, because chances are they're probably using the same company, manufacturer, factories that were building the NES Classic. So they're probably shifting from the NES Classic to the Super Nintendo Classic Edition. And that's exactly what the article says. Nintendo discontinued the NES Classic Edition because it will release the much-requested Super Nintendo Classic Edition this year, according to a new report. A Eurogamer, whose sources correctly leaked the information about Nintendo's Switch console prior to its reveal, claims that the Super Nintendo Classic Edition, our Super Nintendo Mini in Europe, will be released in time for Christmas, and that development is underway. There's no information on what games the micro console could include, nor whether it aims to correct some of the problems with the Nintendo NES Classic Edition, such as unit shortages and the absurdly short controller cable. So see, I was not the only one that was bitching about that short cable, so there. Nintendo controversially discontinued production of the NES Classic last week despite its sale of popularity and the clamor for new units to be produced. Nintendo explained that the NES Classic Edition wasn't intended to be an ongoing long-term product. Yeah, but still, longer than 6 months, Nintendo. At least get more than enough of the NES Classic consoles out there to meet the demand, because there's quite a few of us that really wanted a Nintendo Classic. And it's not that we didn't have the money, it's just that it never appeared on the shelf for us to go purchase it in time before somebody else grabbed it, or like 3 or 4 or 6 of them or 10 of them, and then took them onto Amazon or eBay to sell them for like $200-$300 or $2,000 or even more. So hopefully Nintendo will learn from their mistakes regarding the Nintendo Classic. And here's a few suggestions. I would keep the price tag the same, and I would make it to where you have the ability to add more games to the Super Nintendo. So give it kind of a hard drive. Make the Super Nintendo Classic come with, say, 30 games, similar to the Nintendo NES Classic. But at the same time, there's room on the hard drive for you to purchase more games from the Nintendo library. And you can just download it onto your Super Nintendo Classic. So there'd probably be a Wi-Fi added to it. So I realize that that's going to probably bring the price up for the Super Nintendo Classic from $60 because, Wi-Fi tech isn't cheap. But at the same time, a lot of us would have liked to have the opportunity to purchase more games for these Classic Edition consoles. Even though they're not really consoles, they're just built to look like consoles. They're just kind of like emulators that play these previous games from older systems like the NES and, of course, Super Nintendo. And hopefully there'll be a good quality amount of Super Nintendo games because there was a lot of awesome games that came out with the Super Nintendo. And one thing I want is something that you could order from Nintendo when you were younger. I remember this because they came out with like remastered editions of Super Mario Brothers, Super Mario Brothers 2, and Super Mario Brothers 3. I think it was called Super Mario All-Stars. I could be wrong about that. But you could like send this letter to Nintendo, and then they would ship you the cartridge for your Super Nintendo with these remastered versions of the games, which looked a lot better. So hopefully those 3 versions of Super Mario Brothers will also be included with the Super Nintendo Classic. At the very least, we can only hope. So anyways, yes, it sucks that unless you're willing to shell out several hundred or $1,000, chances are you're not going to be able to get the NES Classic unless there's still another shipment remaining that is yet to make it to stores like Best Buy or GameStop or elsewhere. If it does, I suggest you drop $60 and get it as soon as you can because it's going to be gone with the wind. It will obviously be a classic, and it's going to be something people are going to pay top dollar for because they're not going to be able to get it anymore because Nintendo's not going to make the NES Classic anymore, which, to be honest, sucks. But coming this fall, another chance for Nintendo to take our money with the Super Nintendo Classic Edition, and hopefully, just hopefully, Nintendo will learn the mistakes that were made with the NES Classic.